Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, and today I'm going to be talking about Squid Game Season 1 Episode 5. It's called A Fair World. So full spoilers for the episode as always. First things first, the tug of war game, of course the conclusion to that, and it worked, the plan worked, and I think maybe the one detail that we didn't focus on before with the previous example game was that it's actually quite tough for them to hold all of the people who fall off until the guillotine cuts the rope. So there was actually a small risk for a second of wait, they might drag them off the side of this platform anyway. But more notable though, I think, is the elevator ride down. Very somber. Everyone's kind of just distraught that they helped kill 10 people, even though it was for good reason, and they'd rather it was obviously them than themselves. But there's the religious character who gets very outspoken, and it's actually the new girl who kind of perks up and starts giving him shit for talking about God and sin and forgiveness. And then eventually it's a pickpocket who tells them both to shut up. But it's a very different tone from that raid going up, which I think is a really neat way of showing just how much effect that single individual game has had on them, in a way that maybe the previous games haven't, although they've all had effects. They've all felt everything every time. And of course Team Asshole was shocked to see them walk back through the door back in the bunk beds. So yeah, fun conclusion to the game. Obviously there's not a lot to it. Most of the game took place in the last episode. This episode kind of deals with some follow-up stuff, and I would say the A plot is actually more related to the detective and investigating where his brother is and getting into these organ stealing stuff. That's the organ stealing subplot, which, yes, I might have leaped a little bit far with my giant squid theories when I heard the phrase underwater. Turns out they're just selling organs. Notably, a few details. I did forget to mention, we did see them put a cross on one of the coffins last episode. We see it again this episode, and it kind of makes it clear that these are markers for the guys who are stealing the organs. Where they still put them in the furnace, but they have a trap door that lets them out. And the doctor isn't part of them. He's just kind of being used and being given hints and given extra food for helping effectively. They're also kind of holding him to gunpoint. It's a very strenuous relationship at best, and we get a lot more of it this episode. I mean, the whole thing falls apart this episode, where it becomes known to the leaders. I mean, the leader ultimately says that I don't even really care if you're selling organs or eating them. Ultimately, he doesn't really give a shit. It's more the fact that they've had an impact on the games and that someone's been getting hints, and that takes away from the equality. So there's a lot of little details in here that are really interesting. We have 29 does show up. He's back in his original mask, which kind of confirms the thought that the guy next door who was tapping on the wall, not tapping the wall, he was coughing in Morse code. He didn't really know much. He just knew that he was missing and that he was supposed to be there to help with the delivery yesterday and wasn't. Although he clearly is putting two and two together as the episode goes on, because detective's asking some questions that don't make sense. He's asking questions that he should know the answers to. He's becoming a lot more obviously involved in this. And I did think that by the end of the episode, because all of the organ smugglers get killed in various ways, I thought, maybe he'll be able to slyly sneak back in and just be part of the staff again. But of course they do know that 29 is also involved. They check the doors and who's not there at the end, and 29's not there. So maybe if he still got the square mask, but surely there's still a record of that other superior guard being killed. They must know if they check the paperwork that he's not meant to be there. Although that said, the guard who tries to convince the doctor to come back with them near the end does say to him that guards going missing is not a big deal. They really notice if a player goes missing, because they're heavily recorded and Everyone's keeping track of them, but like a guard going missing is not that huge a deal. So maybe they wouldn't have done, but that's kind of where we are with it on that side of things. But we get to see a lot of stuff here. We get to see like this underwater like exit with the diving suits. We get to see this ladder. We get to see that there's explosives that are there to take the entire place down in the event of discovery, disaster, whatever, you know, may require like a self-detonation. We of course get the detective sneaking around in the leader's quarters and ultimately the records room, which is where we end the episode on. We do have a bit of a face-off between the detective and the other guy who he ultimately kills, and we get, you know, the detective can't leave him alive. He might claim that he's going to help him look for his brother and all that. And there's some grisly details here as well about, because he thinks that he hears about his brother, because they mention that one of the previous bodies that they've done this with only had one kidney, and it, you know, it meant they didn't get like enough money or something from the sale. They're selling organs to the Chinese on a boat somewhere. And he thinks this is his brother, but it turns out that, you know, the guy's defense is that no, it wasn't a guy, it was a woman, and his like evidence to back this up is that they all had sex with her before they took her organs out, meaning that they had sex with either a corpse or someone who was nearly a corpse. So it certainly calls into question that theory I had, that I kind of threw out there, that a lot of the people working here might be old winners. Admittedly, it would explain why they seem to know what the games are going to be. Like, not because they're told specifically what the games are. I mean, they might be. Like, that may be just what's happening, is that they're being told. But it's possible that if they're not told that much, that they just know what the games are once they're prepping them because they remember playing them before. So, you know, once they saw the eggs, they knew that the next game was going to be Tug of War. You know, once they're making the biscuit things, the honeycomb stuff, like they know it's going to be the umbrella game. So like, could be, but like they also don't seem that bright, so it maybe they just lucked out in one. But some of these guys feel a little more sniveling to me in their attitude, so I do wonder, and if they are previous winners, like, would they have the balls to actually try and like do all this sneaky shit around the people in charge, knowing what they do to people who act out of line, knowing what they do to protect the game. I don't know, so probably not, but it's still not out of the question that the detective's brother is here in some other capacity, because the big thing at the end, of course, is that he's looking through the list of players. We see that there's folders for players going all the way back to the 90s, at least. There may have been further than that, but that's the ones I noticed. And it's actually, he doesn't find them in this year's game. He's not in this year's game. But then he looks at the little box, which notably is the same type of like colours and bow as the coffins, with the list of winners, and he sees, you know, enough in that to check the year 2015, which it turns out the big ending cliffhanger of the episode is that his brother won in 2015. Now, I was actually trying to tell when he was looking at the winners list, I was trying to tell if it was only one winner per game. And I wasn't sure because there was a few columns, so it could have been more than one, but there was only one number to me. So it might be that there's only one winner every year, and if that's the case, eventually a lot of these, you know, team members are going to be turning against each other. They're going to keep, you know, ratcheting up that the dissension, the disloyalty, the tension, all that stuff. Like, you can really feel like it's going to keep like just narrowing down and sort of closing in on them. Much like Someone in Debt feels like everyone's closing in on them, I guess, just to go with the themes. But yeah, so big cliffhanger, you know, big deal. I enjoyed seeing the leader towards the end of the episode sort of make his points, like argue, you know, you mess with the one thing here that's like pure is the equality of all the players. Like, they really are equal when they're playing the game, and you've ruined that by giving someone an advantage. And they still kill the doctor, for the record. They don't, because I thought they might let him go back to the game, but they don't. They kill him because he's too tainted. He knows too much, so they kill him. But I really liked the like they know there's someone else because there's no diving suits being taken. There's someone else around here. It feels like the hunt is on for the detective, They know he's in the building, so they don't know he's a detective. They just think it's another player right now. But they know someone's around still to find. So we end in a really big tense moment. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how he gets out of this, if he does get out of it. Like, maybe they capture him and keep him alive for a bit to find out what the hell he knows. But thus far, they've been pretty happy about just shooting people. So that might be a little far-fetched. I have no idea. But this, I think the fact that his brother won in 2015 and yet he's missing now is very interesting, because it does imply that winners of the game have the choice or do go back. I don't think it implies that they're just killed as soon as they win, because it doesn't seem like his brother's been missing for 6 years. Unless I missed that detail, it didn't seem like his brother's been missing that long. It sounds like he's only been missing, was it a year, maybe 6 months? It wasn't a long time. It wasn't 6 years since he played the first time. Or since he won, rather, because he's not playing again. But curious, very curious. It's an interesting wrinkle to the brother mystery that now we have a winner to deal with, and I'm sure we'll see what it takes to be a winner and the problems with that it entails. So really interesting. Good stuff there in that plot. The rest of the characters, though, like, obviously Snake Guy is a little concerned why the doctor's not coming back, or why he's been missing for so long. But most of the rest of the characters in the episode, it revolves around the idea that there might be more attacks throughout the night. So they have the idea of barricading like the corner of the room, and then some of the other teams start copying what they're doing. So they barricade and have like a 2-man watch system of like making sure no one comes in. 2 people, because just in case one like wants to kill the rest of them and get away with it. So again, sowing those seeds of distrust and all that stuff. The mother character, like, she like is so different from the rest of them. She's like gloating about the victory when they're all just somber and don't want to talk about it. And then she gets really xenophobic when Ali throws some of her comments back in her face. Like, obviously, I didn't enjoy the xenophobic part, but I did enjoy Ali kind of like, hey, you were crying like a little baby, and you were saying, let's not do this, when she was praising the plan from earlier. So I enjoyed that stuff. Some good character building. It was probably like, it's kind of an interesting episode in that the main core group, like the players, are the less interesting plot. And that's not to say that it was bad. There was lots of good little moments. There's moments of bonding between Sang-woo and Ali, which were really kind of sweet. There's a nice sweet moment with Pickpocket, where she offers up the rest of her water when the old man gets sick, which is kind of, again, I mean, she kind of goes back on it a little bit by saying, oh, it's not for free, you can pay me back tomorrow, with whatever we get for breakfast or something. But it does come off as a really sweet moment at the time, and I feel like it's almost like she's uncomfortable with being thanked, so she tries to like go out of her way to be a dick about it like immediately. I kind of believe it was a genuine gesture in the moment when it happened. So good stuff. The biggest thing here is probably, well, there's a couple of big things. I mean, one big thing is that Ji-hoon kind of like Snake Man doesn't attack throughout the night, and the reason he doesn't maybe is because as Ji-hoon kind of like makes him question his own teammates. Like, you've built a team full of the assholes who want to go around killing people for their own benefit. Like, do you trust them? Do you not trust them to take you out while you're sleeping? And it's notable that later in the episode, he's not asleep. He gets up and he talks to the guy they've left on guard, and the guy on guard like says, "I'll keep you safe tonight, boss." And he's like, "Yeah, I'm happy you're looking out for me, kid." But there's this underlying kind of like, you're not asleep because you still don't really trust them. Like, that comment about them killing you in your sleep, I mean, that's not, he doesn't say that word for word, Ji-hoon, but that's kind of the implication. Like, those comments have gotten to him, and he is a little paranoid about it, even though he's trying to play cool to keep his leadership intact. So that was kind of neat. And notably, they didn't come up with a 2-man system. They only had one guard to at least begin with. It kind of became a 2-man thing because Snake Man wasn't asleep, and he got up and started like sort of keeping an eye out. But it's notable that they didn't plan for that. So maybe it shows that our main team does have a bit of cunning with them, but some smarts. So cool little detail. But the bigger thing is probably the conversation with Ji-hoon and the old man, where he talks about his backstory where his life kind of fell apart, which is when him and a lot of other guys got fired from a car factory, and they went on strike, and he has these kind of flashbacks to like the guards coming in and beating them up, and basically talked about how they had like they tried to stay overnight, and they had like a 2-man watch system as well, and it was all this strike to try and like, and you know, it's dipping back into the themes of the struggle of the real world, and again, it all comes back to money. It comes back to this was the job, this was the livelihood, and this was right before his kid was born. So he, like, it was the worst time in his life for it. It was, and we find out someone died there as well, which is something that clearly has been eating at him a little bit throughout the episode. Like, you know, because he looks at the face of the leader of the other team when they're playing tug of war, and I think the death of those characters does weigh on him, and I think that's what's making him think he probably feels responsible for that death. And maybe, you know, we don't have complete context, but I suspect that he feels responsible for the death that happened in that strike. That's kind of the implication I was getting from this episode. So, you know, good character stuff. They're all startled when the alarm goes off towards the end of the episode, when they're looking for the traitor, as it were. They're looking for 29. But that was pretty much it. It was definitely one that I had less immediately to say about, and I think it does do a good job of like adding interesting things to the mix, and it does do a good job of shaking up the formula so that we're not getting stale, which is really good. It inherently, because it's not like building to the next game in the episode, it inherently doesn't quite have the same payoff towards the end, although there is a great payoff with the other plot. There absolutely is. I will say, like, these characters that were smuggling organs, the fact that they were just, I mean, I like that they were doing it in secret, because that's interesting from like them defying the boss, but I will say them just smuggling organs is, I won't say disappointing or underwhelming. I think those words are too harsh, but maybe just not as fascinating as I originally thought. And I don't mean that I was rooting for my my giant squid theory of them giving tributes to a giant squid. Like, I'm not saying I wanted that, and I'm disappointed it wasn't that. I'm saying that I thought there'd be maybe a little more to it that was important in the grand scheme of things, as opposed to where now it's like it's dealt with, and like these characters are done, and with the exception of maybe the buyers of the organs maybe getting involved later, it's probably not going to be a huge thing after this. Which is fine, but it's just, you know, the speculation and all the thoughts going into it, we're running wild a little bit, and I think that was maybe slightly smaller scale than I perhaps was thinking. But all the stuff with the detective and finding out about his brother, and like the last like 5 minutes is super captivating. Like that last 5 minutes when he's sneaking around, and like the leader of the whole game is watching all the monitors, and he's like deducing things. He's looking at the bullet that was used to shoot the other, you know, guard. Some good visuals in here as well. I actually really dug all of the like, it was actually making me think of a Resident Evil game in a lot of ways. Like all these all the secret stuff under the island, and kind of the atmospheres that were going down into this cave system. I was getting some vibes. I was getting some nice vibes out of that. But yeah, so the leader becoming more kind of having to enforce some of the rules himself, and not the rules of the game for the players, but the rules of the game for everyone else, is interesting. So I'm excited to see what comes next, and I'm excited to see what the revelation leads to. But I'm excited to see what the next game is, and I'm excited to see the psychology of the players more than anything. I think that's the most fascinating thing about the show, is the psychology of the players as they go through these games. So yeah, so that's episode 5 of Squid Game. So let me know what you thought of this one in the comments below. Like and subscribe, all that stuff. Get me on the Twitters at mailed, pardon me, at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. And of course, you can get me specifically on Twitter at Wooble89. And of course, you can head over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv for as little as $1 per month and get some bonuses for your trouble. But otherwise, that is me. So thank you once again for watching or listening. I always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?